Brr. It's chilly. Welcome to Unwashed Asses, episode 93, recorded for Wednesday, March 13th, 2019. I done think spring about be here. We had a very lovely day of very warm weather, and was able to take the visqueen off the windows and actually open them up and get some fresh air in here, and it's so good. It's what I've been craving. It's what my body needs. But it's a bit chilly. Like I turned the heat off. I don't want to turn it back on. I'll just throw another jacket on or something. But it feels so good. And of course, we're gonna go right back into cold weather. But as long as it's above freezing and we can get rid of this last of this damned snow and ice, and I mean just looking out at the valley here, it's gone for the most part. Before you know it, we'll have trees budding and flowers popping back up, and I can break out the deck chairs and sit outside with a book and better myself, become smarter, which I need lots of, because fuck me, I am dumb. And that's something that's been irking me lately, is just how dumb I am. So I know I didn't really do much in the way of resolutions or goals at the start of this year, but one that did pop up is it's been bothering me how little I read that's not something online or something that doesn't pop in my news feed. An actual, honest to goodness book. So I resolved myself, once read at least one book a month. Now I have a backlog. I have the first 3 books kind of settled. I just have to actually get through and finish reading them. I will say, though, that let me see if we can find the writers, because you guys know how great I am at names on the spot. Just wonderful podcasting here. Okay, yeah, so The Sexy Book of Sexy Sex by Kristen Schaal and Rich Blomquist is getting on my nerves. It's aggravating the shit out of me. While I found it whimsical and entertaining at the start, it's now grating on my nerves, as I can see on the Kindle, like how much I have left, and it's not ending. And I mean, the book isn't exactly what was promised, which is fine, but it's more of just the same inane chattering, and it's written in a style that appeals to my short attention span, which I'm trying to cure, and is very, I think I've said this before, it's reminiscent of like a Cracked article that goes on for an entire book's length. And there are some gems in it, but at the same time, it just fucking will not stop rambling. And again, I'm looking for something more cohesive, something more put together, something with a proper narrative. So I've picked up a couple other books, and I've just like, nope, you can't start those until you finish this. And so now I'm begrudgingly reading this book and getting angry at it for not being over quicker. But no, so February I picked up The Picture of Dorian Gray, which I've always been intrigued by the character but never actually read it, and I've not read anything by Oscar Wilde. And again, it's one of those classics of literature, so I should be smarter for reading it. And then March is fuck me. It's not fuck me. Let me see if I can find it here. Orders. Blah, 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 blah. Let's see. Where is Kindle? Kindle books? Why can't I just view my histories? Where? I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. This is terrible. That is going to aggravate me until I find it. Let's see if I can just open the Kindle fucking app because the website's useless. Oh, yes. The Faithful Executioner. Which is recounting... Essentially, there was an executioner that kept a journal in Germany. And it's one of the most complete resources available. And I've made 2 chapters into it and no further. But despite being a dry read, I need to finish it. I need to better myself. And part of that is doing things you don't want to do. And I like history. I like, taboo topics. So that should be right up my alley. But speaking of history, Kindle's not what I wanted to talk about, nor is my reading. I digress. I'd been thinking about how dumb names are and how they may change going forward in the future. What kind of brought this to my attention is, well, 1, I've always hated my name. But 2 is when I'm playing games with friends and we're sitting in the chat channel, more often than not, they'll use my online handle versus my real name, or it's used interchangeably, and I respond well to it. And it might be because, and this is my theory here, that the online handle is one of my choosing, whereas, my name is one that my parents had chosen for me. And not only the names themselves, but the origins leave me irked. I don't care for my name at all. Like, take, for example, Christian. Religious and beliefs aside, I'm not a practicing Christian. So being named, as a follower of Christ kind of goes against what I actually do believe. And if we get into the actual reason I was named that, it's because of fucking Night Ranger and their one-hit wonder, Sister Christian. Because not only were my parents... very misguided in their naming me that, but also misguided in their taste in music at the time. Because fuck me, is that a terrible name and a terrible song. And so many people are like, oh, but I love the name Christian. It's so unique and you don't hear it all that often and it sounds so nice. But in a job like mine where I go in, half a dozen houses a day, I get the joke repeated. Oh, your name's Christian. Well, what a coincidence. We're Christians too. It's like, I don't subscribe to that to a personal set of beliefs, but you know what? I need a good score on this scorecard, and your survey you're going to get later impacts that, so we're going to roll with it. I always hated the name Christian, and when people ask, oh, well, what do you prefer to be called, Chris or Christian? I'll tell them I honestly don't care. I respond to a lot of things, Chris and Christian being part of that, but Chris never really sounded like me. And it might be because, growing up, whenever people would ask my name, my mom would always say Christian, and, I didn't name him Chris. So, I don't know, I guess a similar concept went into naming my son, where, his name's just Jack, and I didn't name him Jackson. So when people ask, oh, is it short for anything? Nope, just straightforward. And I guess that's the idea, is if you want your kid to be called something, name them that instead of giving them a longer form of the name and then ascribing them a nickname. What's funny, though, is because people are daft and don't pay attention, they will... I'll tell them, oh, my name is Christian, but they'll then shorten it to Chris, and then they'll start calling me Christopher. It's like, that's definitely not my name, but that's one I will correct you on. But it's funny, though, is like, when they'll go out to eat or go somewhere and say you place like an order for food, Starbucks or really any fast food, and they want to have a name to call you by. Apparently people are too dumb to grasp Christian. They're too dumb to grasp my last name. They can't spell it right. So I've just started going by my middle name, which is 3 letters. It's hard to fuck up. And so far it's worked well for me, but it's aggravating. But I guess the point of what I'm getting at is are we getting towards a future where people are going to start going by like online handles? Are we going to become, the Neos and Trinities and Morpheuses of the world? Or is that just too cringy to think about? Because my online handle comes from a fucking accounting error and it just stuck. It worked well. And, rather than be the whole name of 0 and 9, it's just 0. And I understand there's a billion other zeros there, but much like there's a billion Johns out there, it I don't know, fits. I like it. It'll never get to the point where like I go to a formal gathering like, oh yeah, my name's 0. I'm a total fucking tool bag. But in the online context, it works. And as we move to a more online-centric society, our handle's going to become more of a thing. Even think of like, Ready Player One, where we have H and Artemis and Percival, and while those are super douchey names, that was their self-ascribed name. It was something they responded to. It was an identity of their choosing, one rather than one that our parents had ascribed to us. Because when we think of like names, and especially surnames, there's a lot of meaning that comes to a family name, especially if you're of one from prominence, or say there's a particular bad seed or something of notoriety in your history. That name, Hitler's a perfect example. How many Hitlers in Germany or the surrounding area changed their fucking name because of one person? Same thing happens with, surnames. And it got me wondering, as I try to be an inquisitive fellow, try to broaden my horizons. How do we get surnames? So over the wonderful folks over at wonderopolis.org gave me an answer. And their site is cluttered and a mess to read because of all the different colors and fonts and just shit being everywhere. But they gave us a good enough answer. So, essentially, they break down to coming from 4 different areas. So many modern names can be traced back to medieval Europe, since Europeans were some of the first people to settle North America. In the Middle Ages, most Europeans lived in small villages separated from other villages by large tracts of farmland. At the time, populations were small and often separated by enough distance that people didn't necessarily interact with people from other villages. Now, everyone knew everyone else in a particular village, so there really wasn't a need for last names. Over time, though, villages and populations grew. People traveled more, and the need to distinguish between people with the same first name arose. People began to adopt surnames to help distinguish one John from another John. Now, surnames have many different sources, but they can be roughly grouped into 4 categories. Patronymic, locative, occupational or status, and nicknames. The first surnames were quite simple, and they became more diverse and complex over the years. Patronymic names identify people as their father's children, much like my own last name. For example, a father named Richard might have a son named Thomas. Thomas might have become known as Thomas Richards. Likewise, a father named John might have a son named Stephen. Stephen may have gone by the name Stephen Johnson, which would indicate he was a Stephen who was John's son. Locative surnames identify people based on where they were born, live, or work, or the land they own. For example, Simon York was probably the Simon who lived in the town of York. Locative names could also refer to a geographical feature. Theodore Underhill or Robert Atwood probably got their names from references to hills or woods near where they lived. Now, occupational or status names are also common. These are the most common example I could think of. They identify people based on their jobs or social status. Thomas Smith would have been the Thomas in the village who was the blacksmith. And Robert Knight might have chosen his surname to reflect his social standing as a knight. Other common surnames were based on nicknames, which were usually adjectives that helped to describe a person in some way. These may have been based on size, long, short, little, like Martin Short or Richard Little. Coloring, red, black, or white, like Jack and Meg White, or Jack Black. Or personality characteristic, stout, stern, or jolly. So, pretty straightforward. And it makes sense. I mean, it's simpler than I would have. It makes sense in its simplicity, I guess. And so yeah, just that fun little bit of trivia I thought I'd pass along to you guys, let you know what the happy haps are with your surname. I'm always hesitant to do things like the 23andMe or Ancestry.com, like give my DNA up so the powers that be can make a clone of myself that will come murder me in the middle of the night and replace me. Not that anybody would want this life. But I am curious about genealogy and where I come from, not for the sake of, oh, well, I need to make sure I've got, this blood in me because they say I do, and I have this inherent desire to find out, like, oh, this is why I love spicy food because I'm from the Caribbean, or whatever dumb fucking thing. It's just more of a general curiosity. Like, I don't know what half of me is. My father's side has some information, but not a whole lot. And same on my mother's side. I know about 50% of what I am. So I'm curious about the rest, but not enough to actually go digging. But I would like to know more about the last name, I guess. But I'm too lazy. Maybe a project for another time when I retire at 70 and want to start digging into who I am. But yeah. So if you have an interesting last name, or the source and would like to share it, or want to talk about anything else, why don't you drop an email over at theunwashedasses@gmail.com. Again, theunwashedasses@gmail.com. And of course, this year, help the show grow. Tell a friend. Let them know they can get TUA wherever they get their other podcasts. And of course, if you want to go above and beyond, pitch in $1 or $2 over at patreon.com/zeroand09, ZEROAND09. But until next time,